Here
Hello.
we are again at 12th night. I'm so glad to see everybody that's come back. This is John Miller, my professor. I'm Suzanne Sanders.
My tutor.
And we have a little something to start you off with. I found this cartoon. Okay. Shakespeare is always relevant. There you go.
Could you all see it?
No, I couldn't read the whole.
The writing at the bottom says, the parents say about the teen, she wants to chill and wait for greatness to be thrust upon her.
Very good.
That's perfect.
We also want to make a special shout out to anybody watching on the recordings. We kind of cut them off a little bit the last time. We want to show this again. This is one of the movies that we recommend, a version of Twelfth Night. This one was done at the Globe Theater in 2012. It's all male. It's hilarious. And this one is from 1996. It's got Imogene Stubbs playing Viola, and it's more bittersweet and gets into the emotional side of it. And we highly recommend either one of those. And otherwise, we're working off of the Folger edition of Twelfth Night. Mine looks like this. John's looks like this. They're both from Folgers, and they have everything on the same pages. So, you know, that just makes it easier when we're calling out different passages. So, what'd you think? A lot going on in Act 2 and 3, right?
Are you all confused, or is there some light and clarity coming into the play yet, or is it too many characters, too many notes?
Well, my own thought was, those are some really nasty people in that household. That it reminded me of my 8th grade homeroom, which I was very happy to get out of.
What else did they have to do, you know?
So I had just read it, but thanks to you all, I also watched it, and so it was much clearer. It is so much clearer when you watch it than when you just try to read it.
It's hard to juggle all those characters, especially when people keep dressing up as other people and, you know, changing their clothes and running around and hiding and all of that. So it does help to watch it.
Yeah, I find myself going back to the synopsis of the plot to try to figure out the grand lines of what's happening.
Exactly. You're not alone.
I actually read it, then I watched, and then I read it again. And boy, that was great. I mean, it really, you know, I was able to soak in the beauty of the language so much better.
Yeah.
Suzanne and I were talking about how much fun it would be if Twelfth Night was playing in Stanton, Virginia, and we could hire a bus and all go down and see it and talk to the actors afterward, and say, why did you do that? That didn't make sense. What was your motivation? Maybe we'll think about that in the future.
Yeah.
It's a great place to see Shakespeare.
What happened to that? It says autumn of their discontent in Stanton. They've taken an extended intermission.
They did during the pandemic, and I think they're coming back full steam in 2022.
This is dated October 7th of this year.
Yeah.
Washington Post. They're just closing down, and I wondered about that.
Yeah, I think they had a problem with the changing of the guard. And
yeah.
Some actors may have gotten.
We shall see.
Yeah.
Well, for now, here we are. We'll do what we can from here. Well, when we open up, even more characters get introduced. Here we come with Antonio and the Sebastian, the twin that has been spoken of. when Sebastian comes in, one of the things he mentions is that he's been going by the name Rodrigo, because there just aren't enough names in this play.
Exactly.
But the thing I want to draw your attention to in this scene is Antonio loves Sebastian. There's been a lot of discussion over the centuries over, does he mean love, or does he mean love? Yeah, what's he mean there? And if you read old critics at all, they'll often go on about, well, they use the word love to just mean friendship or, positive feelings and all this kind of stuff. And they do a lot of tap dancing to get away from the idea that Antonio loves Sebastian. I think Shakespeare threw it in because he had two brothers that did not get married, which was kind of unusual at the time. One of them, Edmund, was an actor, possibly in the Globe Theater with Shakespeare, because he was buried right near there. So, you kind of wonder, was there a reason why they didn't get married, that kind of thing? But either way, Shakespeare felt like having these two men talking about love and not being particularly freaked out about it was a good thing for this play. So here is another form of love that we've got added to the mix. We've got pretty much every different variation that you could come up with on types of couples. So I think he was just basically putting all the ingredients in, getting all the cogs rolling, and let's see what you think about it as it comes out.
I'd like to comment on Antonio's first lines. If you look at that on page 49 with the Folger text, Antonio says, "Will you stay no longer? Nor will you not that I go with you?" And Sebastian replies, "By your patience, my stars shine dark over me. The malignancy of my late,
My fate.
excuse me, I underlined it, now I crossed out the word. Might perhaps distemper yours. Therefore I shall crave for you your leave that I may bear my evils alone. It were a bad recompense for your love to lay any of them on you." This references to astrology. There's some malign stars that are out of phase that means that he has to bear whatever he is experiencing alone. Do you have any insight on that? What that might be all about? Asking my expert here, but
I was going to say there is astrology all through this. Anytime they talk about stars or fate or heavenly influence, they may be talking about astrology. It wasn't necessarily something that everyone believed, but everybody used it as a way of talking about things. It's shorthand for what we would use pop psychology for nowadays. They used it in the same way. So he's basically saying, things are going bad for me and I don't want it to rub off on you. So a little further on, Antonio, this is around line 35, says, "If you will not murder me for my love, let me be your servant." They use murder in an exaggerated way back then. It doesn't mean literally murder. So,
and Sebastian says that he is going to, he is bound to Count Orsino's court. And then Antonio says, "The gentleness of all the gods go with thee. I have many enemies in Orsino's court. Else would I very shortly see thee there. But come what may, I do adore thee so, that danger shall seem sport, and I will go." What's the danger for him to be in Orsino's court?
He's fought against him and killed some men.
Yep.
So
Exactly.
they'll recognize him.
And they're afraid he'll recognize them, and you'll find a little later on they do. And we have some other, but let's not jump too far ahead. Okay.
Yeah, there's a little passage in there about Sebastian talking about his tears as similar to the sea. Another one of those little references to the sea that pop up all over the place.
Suzanne,
Yes.
I'd like to keep track of the astrology point. You say it's all through the play, and I hadn't thought of that. But I love seeing how it gets used as a as a foil for this or that, blaming things on the stars, blaming on star-crossed lovers, the fault, dear Brutus, is not in ourselves, et cetera, et cetera. And I just love that device. And so as we go along, if you see other instances of it, I'd love to have them pointed out.
Sure. There is that part where Toby and Andrew are talking about his dancing, and they say Taurus is legs. No, Taurus is hips and thighs, or whatever. That's astrology. What they're basically saying is you have this talent because your astrology gave you that talent. Your horoscope gave you that talent. But you see it nowadays. People will say, when things are real screwed up, they'll say, oh, it's Mercury retrograde. That's an astrology term. We're still doing it. We're using it as shorthand for a particular kind of screw up. That's Mercury retrograde. So it's not all that odd, but usually we would use pop psychology where they used astrology. So,
But getting back to Charlie's quote from Julius Caesar, I always thought that Shakespeare wasn't into astrology because of the line, the fault is in ourselves, not in our stars. So, but
yeah, I think you're right.
But so many people did believe, take the onus off themselves and put it on the stars, and it's something you can't control.
I couldn't help myself.
If I could also make a brief comment here about, we'll talk about this next week, but the tears in the salt water, in the poetry of Sebastian's talking about his tears, the flowing of tears is sort of this romantic, kind of accepted idea in romantic poetry of the tears are so overflowing, it's like a gush, like a waterfall. And you see this kind of trope used here, and it's used elsewhere too. But of course, the sea is another issue which we'll talk about because it's omnipresent throughout this play.
Then we move on to Act 2, Scene 2.
I think this Sebastian's speech here, a lady, sir, though it was said she must resemble me, I could not with such estimable wonder, but though, estimable wonder over far believe that, yet I will boldly publish her. She bore a mind that envy could not but call fair. It's a beautiful tribute to sister.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he manages to both be humble and not claim to be handsome and say she's beautiful in the same sentence.
Right.
I mean, that's pretty classy. And so, well, Scene 2 of Act 2, we have Malvolio returning the ring that supposedly Viola gave to Olivia. Now, you remember I said before, note what Olivia said back when she sent her off. When she sent him off, excuse me. I'm starting to get confused about hims and hers here. Olivia said, run after that same peevish messenger, the county's man. He left his ring behind him, would I or not? Tell him I'll none of it. Desire him not to flatter with his lord, nor hold him up in hopes. I am not for him. If that youth will come this way tomorrow, I'll give him reasons for it. Well, what Malvolio says is, she returns this ring to you, sir. You might have saved me my pains to have it taken away yourself. She adds, moreover, that you should put your Lord into a desperate assurance she will none of him. And one thing more, that you be never so hardy to come again in his affairs, unless it be to report your Lord's taking of this. Receive it so. And when Viola says, well, I didn't leave a ring with her, he said, come, sir, you peevishly threw it at her, and her will is it should be so returned. And he throws down the ring. If it be worth stooping for, there it lies in your eye. If not, be his who finds it. Now, what do we think about Malvolio as a messenger here? Is he giving the message that he was told to? Or is he doing something different here?
Very self-serving.
Or do you think that's a reasonable response after you've had to run down the street after somebody and give them their stuff back?
Only for the people in this play.
All right, so y'all are pretty much okay with the way he delivered that. To me, that seems like he's just a little extra grouchy, a little extra judgy. He turns it into a negative comment on Viola, you know, whereas that
And
wasn't.
a little jealous.
Yes.
Yeah, he does seem a little jealous. And he emphasizes, don't come back unless you have a good reason. Whereas Olivia said, have him come back and I'll give him reasons. So we do have jealousy going on here, I think.
Yep.
Yeah. Already, here we go, jealousy. So Viola realizes from this, what does she realize? Did you get that?
That he's in love.
Yeah.
You got it.
Look at line 34. My master loves her dearly, and I, poor monster, fond as much on him. And she, mistaken, seems to dote on me. What will become of this? As I am man, my state is desperate for my master's love. And as I am woman, now alas the day. And she goes on, the next page. What thriftless sighs shall poor Olivia breathe? Oh, time, thou must untangle this, not I. It is too hard a knot for me to untie. And this goes on, the knot being increasingly complex and tied up into infinite knots that ravel up the rest of the play. But it's wonderful listening to that little soliloquy about what am I? As a man, I'm one thing, and as a woman, I'm someone else.
Yeah.
Perfect.
So Shakespeare is also anticipating how the audience is reacting because this is a tangled knot and he's enticing them with, oh my God, how is this going to get unraveled? Even the players themselves don't understand what's going on.
And when you see Olivia acting those lines, you can kind of sense the confusion that's here. There's wonderful glances in several productions. It's just a silence, and you can see her trying to think, what the heck's going on here? And what are my next words?
I really love the line, poor lady, she were better to love a dream.
Yep. It's great. I love it.
Yeah, wonderful.
I've seen a version of this down in Stanton where the line about where Viola is talking about she showed signs of love. She, she started whenever I talked, she gazed on me, all of that, she acted like a person in love. And she said, I am the man. But the way they delivered it was, hey, I'm the man. So that's one thing fun about this play. You can put different people in the roles and they will deliver the very same line differently. And it keeps the comedy fresh. So I find you can go back and see it again and again in different versions, and it will still bring you something new. So that's why I keep pushing the idea of going to see it.
I also like the, going back to Malvolio and he says, "Come, sir, you peevishly threw it to her." And I thought, how ironic, who is the master of peevishness but Malvolio himself?
Exactly.
I was
Takes one to
watching,
know one.
I was watching the version, I guess it was at the Met, that was introduced by Beverly Sills.
Mhm.
And the expressions are really on the actors' faces, and the pauses, and the intonation. That's what, that's when you're like, oh, that was really funny.
Yeah.
So,
Yep, we're just giving you the language you need to get in there and bust a gut over it.
Yes.
So then we go back to Toby and Sir Andrew because there's not enough mayhem going on yet. On line 10, there's that, does our lives not consist of the four elements? This is where they start getting into some more of the pop psychology of the day. Everything's made of four elements is the idea. If you have too much of one or the other, then you get sick, or you get too rowdy, or you get unhappy. So that's what's going on whenever they're talking about the four elements, or earth, air, fire, water. So just a little heads up in case you don't know about all that stuff.
Maybe those treatments of alchemists will come back. And the humors.
The humors.
Yeah, they start singing. And boy, do they start singing.
Exactly.
They sing catches. That's just rounds. That's like row, row, row your boat kind of things. So often you see this devolve into a bunch of drunks singing the same thing over and over and over again over top of one another. And
you have another example of some wordplay here with Andrew. You see there at the very bottom about line 20.
oh yeah.
Yeah, it says, "By my troth, the fool has an excellent breast. I had rather than 40 shillings. I need such a leg, and so sweet a breath to sing as the fool has. In sooth, thou wast in very gracious fooling last night, when thou speakest of Grammatus and the Vapians passing the equinoctial of the Quibus. 'Twas very good, the faith. It sent thee sixpence for thy layman. Passed it?" So here we have a mockery of astrological stuff. And I can't even pronounce those words. But
He's babbling, making up words and rolling them off quickly so that then it turns into a joke.
yeah, sorry, I interrupted you.
No, that's all right. The fool sings a serious song, a song about love. "Oh, mistress mine, where are you roaming?" I won't sing it because we really don't know what the music was that went with most of Shakespeare's songs.
But Suzanne, we did sing it.
We did sing it. There are a couple of them that have come through in history. But most of his songs, they lost the music because the Puritans closed down the theaters for just long enough. They lost a generation of actors that knew how to sing the songs. So there are some of them that they know what the tunes are, but usually they set the lyrics into a new tune every performance. And that's one of the way it stays fresh. You'll hear a version where it sounds like a rock song, or it sounds like a country song, or whatever. And this one is usually presented kind of with a kind of melancholy edge to it. So they're all talking about lost love at this point.
If you don't mind, let me just look at the words there.
Sure.
I'm not going to sing them, although my voice is beautiful. Oh,
You
mistress
have good
mine.
breath.
Oh, mistress mine, where are you roaming? Oh, stay in here, your true love's coming, that can sing both high and low. Trip no further, pretty sweetie, journey's end in lovers' meeting. every wise man's son doth know. And Andrew says, excellent, good, faith, good, good, more. What is love? 'Tis not hereafter. Present mirth hath present laughter. What's to come is still unsure. In delay there lies no plenty. Then come kiss me, sweet and twenty. Youth the stuff will not endure. There's the melancholy note, but it's beautiful poetry. And when sung,
Sure is, yeah.
it's gorgeous.
And it's so much easier to understand. I could read the songs the first time through and get it immediately.
Yes, exactly.
No effort. It was written for us common folk. Grasp.
And I love Andrew's response. A mellifluous voice, as I am true knight. And then Toby, a contagious breath, very sweet and contagious of faith. You go on, they're playing with wordplay with each other about.
Obviously, contagious has nothing to do with sickness. It's like it sticks in your head.
Mhm.
It's sick in the way an earworm is. There's a lot of singing in this play when people are letting their emotions come through. The guys sing when they're drunk and when they're melancholy and when they're happy. When Toby gets confronted by Malvolio, he sings. And a little later on, when Malvolio makes his great appearance, a lot of his lines are bits of songs that were popular in Shakespeare's time. You wouldn't know that from reading it because he's just choosing basically the hook in each of the songs and putting it into poetry. But there's music throughout.
Yeah.
And so we've got these characters talking to each other, a lot of singing, and then in comes Maria. And what does she have to say about all this ruckus going on in her house? What a lot of caterwauling do you keep here?
That's a great word.
Exactly. If any lady, again, I underlined a word that
If my lady have not called up her steward Malvolio and bid him turn you out of doors, never trust me. And then Malvolio makes his entrance.
exactly.
My masters, are you mad?
Keep going. It's really good.
Again with the madness. Everybody's mad in here. It's the tea party, the Mad Hatter's tea party going on. My masters, are you mad? Or what are you? Have you no wit, manners, nor honesty, but to gabble like tinkers at this time of night? Do you make an ale house of my lady's house? That you squeak out your cozier's catches without any mitigation or remorse of voice? Is there no respect of place, persons, nor time in you? He's pissed. It
Yes.
woke him up.
He's peevish.
And he likes to use impressive words.
And it probably was woken up not for the first time, though, by these guys.
When they talk about it being my lady's house, now you have to picture it's a big house. It's at least a mansion. So they're probably down somewhere near the kitchen. So they got to be making some noise to be waking everybody up at the other end of the house.
Yeah, I love Malvolio's response about this. On around 95, Sir Toby, I must be round with you. My lady bade me tell you that though she has,
Though she
she harbors you as her kinsman, she's nothing allied to your disorders. If you can separate yourself and your misdemeanors, you are welcome to the house. If not, and it would please you to take leave of her, she will very willingly bid you farewell. So some of the things that Malvolio is speaking about here, about the impropriety of this lady's house, this is not decorous in a mansion like hers, and
A house of mourning.
exactly, a house
Yeah.
of mourning
Yeah.
as well. The you can see Malvolio at this point is carrying the line that Maria is suggesting. No, this is this caterwauling, and he comes in and says the same thing, but then tables get turned a little bit when he becomes a little too festive, and then we will get into the great joke That is a kind of often viewed as a pivotal, one of the pivotal elements in the play.
Yeah, I think at this point, he pisses Toby off,
Right.
first off. He treats him like somebody that he could boss around. And Toby, after all, is an aristocrat and above Malvolio. And at the time, that would have made a big difference. At first, he kind of brushes him off by singing. He does this little song and dance number with Feste. This is merry old England making a stand against the Puritans. You know, he tries to laugh it off, but eventually he gets mad. He's going to fight back. And I think you find the point that he really goes against him is when he turns and attacks Maria. Because he's not getting anywhere with Toby. He says to Maria, my lady will hear of it. He's going to go tattle. He's going to get her in trouble. So what do you think? Are you with Malvolio at this point?
Never.
This
What's
is
your
my,
point?
what I'm,
I got no trouble with Malvolio. It kind of reminded me from a couple of the versions that you guys recommended of Hudson and the upstairs, downstairs version, just trying to keep the household in order, maybe lacking some of Hudson's humanity, but nevertheless, that's really all he seemed to be wanting to do. I don't think I don't know, we'll get to this, but I don't think he deserved what he got, obviously, right?
Yeah. And then Toby, go ahead.
one of the end on line 121, it's Sir Toby says, art thou more than a steward? Dost thou think because thou art virtuous that there will be no more cakes and ale? It's one of the great sentences in Shakespeare.
Indeed it is, exactly. In fact, Toby then goes on and says, thou art of the right. Go, sir, rub your chain with crumbs. Do you know what the chain is?
The one he wears around his neck, or?
Yeah,
It's a symbol of his,
stewardship. I mean,
His
he's a steward.
stewardship.
And to rub it with to shine it up with crumbs is a kind of a demeaning statement. But it does give the suggestion that Malvolio is rather proud of his role, and maybe he's is seeking higher status here. He knows he's powerful, and he's got Milady's backing him at this point. But you're right, Anne. That's a wonderful line about cakes and ale.
It seemed to me that though he was always trying to ingratiate himself with Olivia, because he loved her, and everything he did was to ingratiate himself with her.
Exactly.
I can't say that I cared for him right from the beginning.
this play is a little bit tough to balance out because Malvolio kind of takes it over. You can't help having sympathy for him because of the way he's treated later on. The trick is they got to make him obnoxious enough. And there are references to things he did that were cruel for no reason. He seems to be going around just trying to mess up other people's lives. Like later they say that he brought a lawsuit against the sea captain and had him put in jail. You know, why is he going around having suits against sea captains? You know, he's got plenty to do at home. He's, you know, getting people in trouble with Olivia over bear baiting or, you know, whatever, the things that they do for entertainment. It's like anytime somebody does something that seems to him a little too rowdy, you know, or they're having too much fun and he's not in on it, you know, they get in trouble for it at his hand. But all of this is just referenced and you don't see it. So our emotions follow him because we see what happens to him. So the trick with putting this play on is to make him obnoxious enough and not show too much torture. I do have to say that sometimes they cut lines in this play and it will really bend how it's treated. So, you know, reading it does make a difference.
Suzanne, as a lawyer, I wouldn't lump bringing a lawsuit against the sea captain into Malvolio's faults. I really don't see the issue there myself.
Well, you know, going out of your way to go find a sea captain to bring a suit against is more what I was leaning towards. I got nothing against lawyers. I got a daughter who's a lawyer.
And if you look at Malvolio's statement at the bottom, at line 120, Mistress Mary, if you prized my lady's favor at anything more than contempt, you would not give means for this uncivil rule. She shall know of it by this hand. And then Malvolio exits, and Maria then, go shake your ears. And there's a reference there to being an ass. Go shake your head. So she's turned on Malvolio after Malvolio has previously sided with her. There's even more back and forth here with Toby and Maria.
Well, I think the other thing we should take away from this scene, besides all this, is the exchange at the end when Mariah's about to leave. Toby says, "Good night, Penthesilea." That's an admirable Amazon woman. Andrew says, "Before me, she's a good wench." We're around line 175, by the way. "She's a beagle, true bred, and ones that adores me. What of that?" And Andrew says, "I was adored once too." And it's like, oh, you know, Andrew hasn't been doing anything but being an idiot all this time. And all of a sudden, it's like your heart goes out to, "I was adored once too."
That's another one of those lines.
Yeah.
It speaks, it's a blank in a way. What's behind that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'd also like to, on page 65, Maria thinks about this plot that to drop off some letters and that Malvolio will read them. And let's look at Sir Toby around line 163. "He shall think by the letters that thou wilt drop that they come from my niece and that she's in love with him." And Maria says, "My purpose is indeed a horse of that color, Andrew, and your horse now would make him an ass." Maria, "Ass, I doubt not. Oh, 'twill be admirable." And Maria, "Sport royal, I warrant you. Sport royal. I know my physic will work with him. I will plant you two, and let the fool take a third, where we shall find the ladder. Observe his construction of it. This night to bed and dream on the event. Farewell." She exits. Now we got a plot, a sport, an entertainment, which we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
We
Toby definitely likes keeping the pot stirred up.
Right.
He's the one that's motivating an awful lot of the mayhem going on.
And even at the end there, that says, "Let's come, let's go, let's have some more sack. 'Tis too late to go to bed." So there the revel carousing continues down below.
It's too early to stop and it's too late to go to bed. So
I was kind of shocked at what they considered sport in Elizabethan England at that time. I had never looked up bear baiting until last night. And that was, what a distressing thing that was to read about. I mean,
Very distressing. Yes, there's even some evidence that it might have been some bear baiting might have happened in the theater, not just near.
Lord.
But it's a,
yeah, and there, you know, there were executions that people went to view all the time, and that was considered entertainment.
Yeah.
Some of the cruelty in this play, you got to put down to the time. It's similar to what was going on. I kind of think of it like horror movies now. Oh my God, horror movies are so gory. I can't even watch them. But, you know, a lot of people, they're just like, oh, well, that's just the way it is, you know? So I think that is part of the reason why we feel the cruelty in this play so much. And I don't really think they did at first. I think they thought it was much more hilarious across the board.
There's the Colosseum and bullfighting.
Yeah, yeah,
Ugh.
yeah, I know. Took us a while to get out of that.
And remember, in the South, lynching was a sport too.
It's true. It's true.
Uh,
People will do all kinds of things to have a good time.
Modern day crucifixion.
mhm.
Maybe that was a sport to the Romans.
It's true. Maybe so. Let's go to scene 4, Act 2, scene 4. Here we come with music. Give me some music. Here comes Orsino again. Down on about line 16, I guess, Orsino calls for Viola to come. Come hither, boy. If ever thou shalt love, in the sweet pangs of it, remember me. For such as I am, all true lovers are, unstayed and skittish in all motions else, except for in the constant image of the creature that is beloved. Do we agree with Orsino? Is he the truest lover that there is? Is he the example that we should all take?
He certainly is the truest lover of himself. But
So I was going to say that. He's in love with love and in love with himself being in love.
Yeah.
They're kind of a zany.
There's a
what
little.
does she see in him? What does she see in him?
Well, if you think about it, he's sitting back and feeling, but not really doing a lot to get his love advanced. Viola's in her situation and with him, she loves him, but she's not really doing anything to advance it either. They're both reacting the same sort of way. Whereas you have Antonio, who's in love, and he not only goes and does something about it, he risks his life for it. So you've got a little contrast there. Some people are more the type that put themselves forward in pursuit. Some people are more the kind that have to be coaxed in. And I think Viola and Orsino are of the coaxing in variety.
Now, Viola can be very passive at times.
Yes.
Don't you think?
Yeah.
Uh,
I can't untie this knot. She doesn't really make a shot at it. So. And they get into an exchange about who's the truest love, men or women. Orsino says, "Oh, I have a feeling, Viola, that you've loved somebody." And he asks, well, "What kind of woman is it? Kind of your complexion. How old? About as old as you." She's trying not to lie, but she's trying not to give herself away at the same time. When she says, "About your years, my lord," this is around line 34. Orsino says, "Too old, by heaven. Let still the woman take an elder than herself. So wears she to him? So sways she level in her husband's heart? For boy, however we do praise ourselves, our fancies are more giddy and infirm, more longing, wavering, sooner lost and worn than women's are." And she says, "I think it well, my lord." And he says, "Then let thy love be younger than thyself, or thy affection cannot hold the bent. For women are as roses, whose fair flower, being once displayed, doth fall that very hour. And so they are, alas, that they are so, to die even when they to perfection grow." It kills me every time I hear it. But what do you think? What do you think about this argument here? Who's the best lover? Who's the perfect age? Which sex has the has the real trick of loving.
Maybe some of these stereotypes are still with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With my spouse on the line, I dare not speak.
No, 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 I dare not. You think that's a common thought nowadays, that men should be older than women? Do you think that still holds like it did before?
Absolutely.
And taller, preferably.
As
I'm
tall
not
as-
sure among younger people that it does at all. I know many people, especially younger people, where the woman is older than the man. I think it's changing.
Okay. Yeah.
But I think when, we were coming up, it was definitely
Yes.
still in the culture.
Tall, dark, and handsome, wasn't that the phrase?
Oh, yeah.
My mother was older than my father. And it worked out okay.
Yeah, we like the result.
One of the things that I was thinking about the age difference is that historically, women were beholden to their husbands for everything, especially, if a husband was considerably older and the woman was too inexperienced. But I think women today don't feel that way at all, obviously. And I think they might avoid marrying somebody too much older for that reason. That's just the thought I had.
Mhm. Good.
And women,
Just remember the French president who's married to a woman who's 15 years older than he is.
It has changed.
Right.
They get into another bit of an exchange over basically Orsino's stalking. I can't help but think that if Orsino were doing what he's doing today, he'd probably have an injunction against him constantly coming around. He won't take no for an answer. Viola says to him around about line 96, "But if she cannot love you, sir," Orsino says, "I cannot be so answered. Sooth, but you must. Say that some lady is, perhaps there is, we know that there is, hath for your love as great a pang of heart as you have for Olivia. You cannot love her. You tell her so. Must she not be then answered?" Orsino says, "There's no woman's sides that can bide the beating of so strong a passion as love doth give my heart. No woman's heart so big can hold so much. They lack retention. Alas, their love may be called appetite. No motion of the liver was considered the seat of passion, but the palate that suffers surfeit, cloyment, and revolt. But mine is all as hungry as the sea and can digest as much. Make no compare between the love a woman can bear me and that I owe Olivia." What do we think about this?
It's egotistical.
Yeah.
It's right down the line.
He's in
And
love
once
with
again, why
himself.
does she like him?
Well, he keeps touching her and caressing her in many of the performances.
Well, look a little bit further down there around line 112. Viola says, but I know, and Orsino, what dost thou know? Viola, too well, what love women to men may owe. The faith, if they are as true of heart as we, my father had a daughter loved a man, as it might be, perhaps I were a woman, I should ask your lordship. And what's her history, says Orsino? Viola, a blank, my lord. She never told her love, but let concealment, like a worm in the bud, feed on her damask cheek. She pined, methought, and with green and yellow melancholy, she sat like patience on a monument, smiling at grief. Was not this love indeed? We men may say more, swear more, but indeed our shows are more than will, for still we prove much in our vows, but little in our love.
Mhm.
Marcino. But died thy sister of her love, my boy? Viola. I am all the daughters of my father's house, and all the brothers too, and yet I know not, sir, shall I to this lady? Marcino. Aye, that's the theme. To her in haste, give her this jewel. Say my love can give no place. Bide no delay. How does Viola come out on that one? Any feelings about?
Well, I just love the line of "I am all the daughters of my father's house." I mean, that was beautiful wordplay, and she's got it all on him. Got it all on him.
And then she had to quickly correct herself because she was playing the male. So then she had to say, I think she had to say, and the sons or the, yes. So she was really in a complicated situation. I don't know how she kept it straight.
Speaking of tying of the knots there, it's getting worse. She's cool in a way, isn't she? Is that the right word?
Quick, she's very quick.
Passive, but also playing the game as best she can.
But as she retains a purity to her.
Mm-hmm.
Don't.
Well, I could talk about Viola all day long, but so we won't run out of time. We must move on to the gulling of Malvolio. There's a title of what's coming up in Act 2, Scene 5, where they lay the letter out in the garden for Malvolio to find. He's out there play acting, being the king of the castle, basically, with his inflated language, and they're all hiding behind. A lot of the
shrubs, aren't they?
Yeah, a lot of the action in this scene in performances you see is keeping them from being discovered because they keep yelling out commentary to what Malvolio is saying.
That he can't hear.
Yeah, he can't hear it. But Andrew says things just popping off like he does, and Toby tells him to shut up, and then Toby pops off because he's pissed off. And Fabian tells him to shut up, and it just goes around and around and around, trying to keep it quiet while Malvolio is reading this letter aloud, which even Shakespeare was like, how am I going to get it so that he reads it aloud? And he just comes right out and has them say, oh gods, please let him read it aloud. And their prayers are answered.
Some of those retorts are pretty mean, like pistol him.
Yeah.
And then Toby aside, peace. I mean, these guys are hiding out, and the language is meant to be funny, but yet it's, cruel.
It is cruel.
Absolutely cruel.
There's a lot about different weapons. That stone bow, that's a slingshot that I told you about before. I do have to give you a little bit of info that might not make sense when you're either seeing or reading this play. Line 87, Malvolio takes up the letter and says, by my life, this is my lady's hand. And then there's an obscene joke that apparently they liked so much that they repeat it. These be her C's, her U's, and her T's. Well, and is pronounced like the letter N. I won't go into any more detail on that, but they liked it so much they repeated it. This is high culture, folks.
Yeah.
But as I said before, Shakespeare liked to keep the audience in their seats. So he put in something for everyone.
Well, it's like Lance said, it's middle school boys all over again.
You got it. You got it. This letter is written in the style of courtly love. This was the accepted way that you wrote to your love. A lot of high flown phrases, a lot of tricky wordplay to show how clever you were. There were books out teaching you how to do this at the time. It was something you were expected to do. This is definitely an example of that. So to us, it sounds like, what the hell, why don't you just come on out and say, meet me behind the barn or something. But they didn't do it that way.
And you could imagine when he reads these letters, MOAI, which I suppose at one time may have made scholars scurrying all over the place to figure out what that was all about. But he sees himself wherever he wants to see himself.
Right.
And then I think we're way ahead of it. MOAI. Oh my gosh, that begins with M. Malvolio, that's me. And then he continues on trying to figure all that out, while the Toby and the other crowd are laughing at him, and he comes across as pretty absurd, foolish, narcissistic, using language that's very ornate and rhetorical, and all the while pacing back and forth in the garden. If he had a mirror to look at himself, he would probably pull it out, see how he looks.
But he is also bringing us with him as he's figuring it out. It gives us in the audience a chance to kind of say, oh, okay, now I understand this. Yeah, okay, I'm with him. And that way, everybody is brought up to the same speed. So we all know what they're trying to do with him here. They make a lot of suggestions of, how we ought to act, how we ought to show up. And boy, howdy does he. He doesn't recognize humor. It's one of the things about him. He doesn't like it. He doesn't recognize it. The lines about Olivia commending his yellow stockings, but Mariah says she hates yellow. So she was probably being ironic or joking, and it goes right over his head. He doesn't get it. He's just a stick in the mud. That's his major problem, which is, a killing offense in Toby's book, basically. Need to move along.
Yes, exactly.
Well, let's jump up to Act 3. We have Viola and the Fool joking around quite a bit. There's a nice line in there, in line 40 in scene 1, about foolery shines on everyone. It's like the sun, it shines everywhere on the orb. Foolery, sir, does walk about the orb like the sun. It shines everywhere. Now, see, I can't put it into words in more than 3 sentences, whereas Shakespeare gets it right down to the bare essence there. He has a lot of admiration for fools. You find this throughout his plays. In Act 3, Scene 1, line 59, Viola is talking about Feste. She says, this fellow is wise enough to play the fool. Wise enough. And to do that well craves a kind of wit. He must observe their mood on whom he jests, the quality of the persons and the time. And like the haggard, which is a kind of hawk, check at every feather that comes before his eye. Checking at a feather is like, catching it in its eye and going after it. This is a practice as full of labor as wise man's art. For folly that he wisely shows is fit, but wise men fallen into folly quite taint their wit. A fool can be wise, but a wise man can't act the fool without endangering his reputation. So Viola is acknowledging the role of the comedians and speaking as someone reading a comedy. I'm okay with that. Yeah, let's up the comedy here.
What role does Fabian play?
He's kind of a lever to keep things rolling along. Mostly he's an observer. He's not in the center of the action until right near the end when he steps forward and reports what he has seen. So he's kind of acting the same role as people's little videos on their phones act today. Not necessarily in the action, but recording it. So. And he is not supposed to be a servant. A lot of times he's shown as like a gardener or something, but he's actually supposed to be someone who is, like a visitor to the house more so.
Let's see if I'm going to take a look here. If we look at Act 3, Scene 1, around line 90. Viola, my matter hath no voice, lady, but to your own most pregnant and vouchsafed ear. Andrew, odors, pregnant, and vouchsafed? I'll get them all three already. Let the garden door be shut, and leave me to my hearing. Sir Toby, Sir Andrew, and Maria exit. Give me your hand, sir. Olivia. My duty, madam, and most humble service. Olivia. What is your name? Viola. Cesario is your servant's name, fair princess. Olivia. My servant, sir? 'Twas never merry world since lowly feigning was called compliment. Your servant to the Count Orsino, youth. Viola. And he is yours, and his must needs be out yours. Your servant's servant is your servant, madam. Olivia. For him, I think not on him. For his thoughts, would they were blanks rather than filled with me. Viola. Madam, I come to whet your gentle thoughts on his behalf. Olivia. Oh, by your leave, I pray you. I bade you never speak of him again. But would you undertake another suit? I had rather hear you to salute with that than music from the spheres. Viola. Dear lady, give me leave, beseech you. I did send after that last enchantment you did hear. A ring in the chase of you. So did I abuse myself, my servant, and I fear me, you, under your hard construction must I sit, to force that on you in a shameful cunning, which you knew none of yours. What might you think? Have you not set mine honor at the stakes, and baited it with all the unmuzzled thoughts that tyrannous heart can think? To one of your receiving, enough is shown. A cypress is not a bosom, hides my heart. So let me hear you speak. What's happening in this?
One of the things that's happening is John's falling in love with the language. I can tell you that right now.
I read too much. I'll stop. But it's marvelous.
You can't help yourself. It sucks you in. Olivia's trying to be adult about this. She's trying to rein herself in. She's trying to be the good gal, but she can't help it. Her emotions overcome her. And she even goes as far as saying, well, westward ho, go that way. Viola says westward ho when she says go west. She can't keep it in. For her, love is something that you fight right up until it overwhelms you. So another view of love going on. Love sought is good, but given unsought is better, is her theory. So then, we move back to Fabian and Toby and the whole crew there. There's a problem. Toby has Andrew around mostly to supply the ducats that are needed to pay for all this wine that they've been drinking. And Andrew's had enough. He says, Olivia did more for Cesario in a moment for a servant than she's done for me. All of these weeks I've been here wooing her, and I'm out of here. I'm going home. And Fabian, he actually does have some action in this. He comes up with the argument to keep Andrew from leaving.
Yeah.
He says, she did this to awake your dormouse valor. God, I love that line.
Wonderful phrase.
If that doesn't nail little tiny bit of courage that needs to be waken up, dormouse valor. So they convince him that he needs to do something manly and dramatic and get himself back in her attention. So they're going to have a sword fight. They got to have a challenge.
It's got everything in it.
You think this is a love story? It's an action role.
Exactly.
So they get into it back and forth. First, they send him off to write his challenge. His challenge shows what an absolute idiot he is. So
You kind of go back to what you were saying before in Act 2, Scene 5. We men may say more, swear more, but indeed our shows are more than wills, for still we prove much in our vows, but little in our love. It's all in the show, baby.
there you go. There you go. You got it. So they set it up that Andrew's going to challenge Cesario. They're also having a good time. You can tell that they're probably laying bets on who's going to do what, and whether they'll actually fight. They're not at all sure they're actually going to cross swords. They think they'll probably just go around for a while and keep each other busy. So this keeps the action rolling until the big scene. I think we have to jump ahead just because we cannot cut off what happens in the big scene. Let's see, let me jump ahead a little bit here.
Okay.
Okay. We get to Act 3, Scene 4. I'm jumping ahead a little bit here.
131.
Yeah. This is where Olivia sends for Malvolio. And she's expecting to have Cesario arrive. So she just wants Malvolio for a few minutes to kind of calm her down because she's so wound up. And Malvolio is always a if nothing else, calming presence. Okay, let's see. She says to Mariah around about line 15, go call him hither. I am mad as he, if sad and merry madness equal be. If you start looking for the word madness in this play, it pops up over and over again, but they talk about sad and merry madness. There's the kind of crazy behavior that is the result of being at wit's end because of bad occurrences. But there's also the madness of being so excited and overwrought in happiness that you're not right. They pushed an idea of moderation in all things, but this play is more of a manic depressive kind of thing going on back and forth. Mariah has told her that Malvolio seems a little crazy this morning. She actually warns her that he does nothing but smile. Now, imagine what it must be like around there all the time if you have to warn somebody that he's smiling, that it's so odd that you have to warn them. I think he's tainted in his wits. So Malvolio comes in, doing what he was told to in the letter. He's got bright yellow stockings on. He's got ribbons tied around him all crisscross around his knees to set off his lovely leg. He is smiling, which obviously is a very difficult thing for him. They usually play up the fact that when he smiles the first time, it's like glaciers cracking. He is kissing his hands, blowing kisses everywhere, doing little dancey things. His lines are lines from pop songs of the day. Not Black in My Mind, though Yellow in My Legs is from some song of the time that was all about black and yellow, and it was talking about black and yellow back and forth. The line, "I, sweetheart, I'll come to thee," that was the hook from another song.
Boy, they don't write them like that anymore. Damn.
Please one and please all. That was another line from a song at the time. So basically he's coming in and he's singing and dancing, and this is not the Malvolio we've seen through the rest of this play. God comfort thee. Why does that thou smile so and kiss thy hand so oft? So he is really going. What do you think about this scene? What did you think when he came in?
This is such a fun scene. It's hilarious. And we've watched it played 3 different ways. And it's just, it's one of those scenes you really can't appreciate until you see it played out, because his prancing around. And what does it mean, cross garter?
Cross gartering.
What is that?
You know how usual garters on hose go around the thigh or around just above the knee? Well, they would cross them, wear 2 pair and crisscross them at the knee and put like bows on them and things like that. So basically you're showing off, your good stuff by, putting some fancy ruffles on it. And,
It had to hurt.
Well, that was the fun part, because when Guinness is playing it, he comes in sort of prancing, but he's having trouble walking because the garters are cutting circulation off his lower legs.
They were the pointy high heel shoes of their day.
Yeah.
It wasn't meant to be comfortable. It was meant to look hot. But there is the great line that was referenced in our cartoon at the start. Some are born great, some achieve greatness, and some have greatness thrust upon them. There are a lot of jokes about that line, thrust.
Malvolio took that and ran with it.
Yeah.
This was his mission.
And Olivia just exclaims, "Why, this is midsummer madness." They thought that midsummer weather made people go crazy with love. So it was the excuse. Oh, the sun was out. It was May. I couldn't help myself. So they call for Sir Toby to come and take him away.
And tie him up and put him in a dark room. Wow, the solution.
Yeah. But there is, where is it? Somewhere in there, line 145 in scene 4. Toby says, "Come, we'll have him in a dark room and bound. My niece is already in the belief that he's mad. We may carry it thus for our pleasure and his penance till our pastime, tired out of breath, prompt us to have mercy on him, at which time we will bring the device to the bar and crown thee for a finder of madmen." What he's saying basically is, we'll keep him in in the dark for a little while. And then, we don't want to have him suffer too much. We'll take him out, but we'll take him to court and we'll get some money for turning him in as a crazy person. So they usually cut all that out
Yes, that's cut.
when you see that
Yeah.
performed. So you don't see that Toby plans from the start not to go too far. He doesn't mean to have it go to the extent that it's often shown. I mean, they show Malvolio looking like he's been in a torture chamber in some versions, and it's obviously meant more as we're going to do it for fun for a little while, but then let's get some money out of it and let it go. So
Yeah, sometimes the practical joke can just be, not that funny.
yeah. Yeah, it's way too cruel and
But I think that's a good point that Suzanne brought up. These lines that she just read about Sir Toby's not wanting to go too far. Until reading this this time, I never noticed those lines, or they were cut,
I think they're usually cut.
which gives a very, very different touch to the outcome or to the treatment of Malvolio. Now we still have to see him when he's in the dark room, bound and piteously asking for more light and a pen. You can see that this is getting pretty far. He doesn't know that they don't want it to go too far. I mean, he's in the midst of obviously there is fun in seeing it come uppance, but then on the other hand, I think there is, without that sense of they don't want it to go too far, it's.
Oh my gosh, if that's not too far, what is?
What is, exactly. I was
It can
even
be very hard. It can be very hard to stop a practical joke, I guess. You've
Mhm.
started.
Yep.
It's true.
And so his being bound is another word for a straitjacket, I suspect, and put in a dark place, which gives you a little tiny window onto how to treat people who have mental problems.
Mhm.
Lock them up and keep them from doing harm to themselves or to others.
Yep, they weren't the kindest people to to people
That
that were little-
continues. That continues.
Right. And then we look at the word sport again. This is sport. This is fun to watch, up to a point.
Well, I think they know that they need to take him off stage, but they need to also kind of distract you for a minute so you won't start thinking too much about what might happen to Malvolio. We want to be surprised by that later on. So they have their little sword fight, the challenge in the orchard. There's a line in there. We're talking Act 3, Scene 4, line 232. I picked that out because they don't define it in a lot of books. Dismount thy tuck. That means take out thy sword. But otherwise, what's mostly going on here is Toby and Fabian are working really hard to make this fight happen. And the whole time it's going on, Viola and Sir Andrew are trying really hard not to have to fight.
Right.
They know they have to because that's what gentlemen do when they get challenged, but they're both cowardly in some fashion. Andrew, because he's just a natural coward. Viola, because she doesn't know how to fight. Sometimes in movie versions of this, they'll have scenes in the early part of the story showing her getting a little bit of training with a sword. It's not a complete farce, her trying to figure out how to pick up a sword and that kind of thing. But basically, she's not wanting to do it. Andrew's not really wanting to do it. And they both feel like they either have to or they can't turn away from it. And Antonio happens along and sees Sebastian getting the worst of it. Because obviously Viola is not going to be a great sword fighter. So he busts in and says, he will take the place of Viola. Anything that you want to do to Viola that he thinks is Sebastian, do to me instead. And that gets him caught. So in this couple of scenes, we've got Malvolio, he's been caught and put in the dark house. We got Antonio caught, and he's headed off to jail, or somewhere like that. We've got Olivia. She's still caught in her love and not able to do anything. Viola's caught in her love and not able to say anything. Orsino's still caught in the music room over at his castle, having a hard time. Everybody is getting captured. And then next week, we're going to get into Acts 4 and 5, where everybody gets out of their respective prisons in one way or another. We're going to free all these lovers to the world, if everything works as we plan.
Well done.
Yeah.
Well done, Suzanne.
I wanted to rush through the end of that because I would really like you guys to give a little thought to all these images of the sea that we've been kind of tapping on occasionally, and of music for the next time. Those are both woven throughout the story. And, I'd like to hear a little personal response, maybe if you have something to some bit of poetry in there, or some reference to the sea, some reference to music, because music is the food of love.
So play on.
Do we have any questions?
There was somewhere along the line, and forgive me, I didn't mark it, but they said something like Farge, Farge.
Yes, badge.
Badge, what is that?
Badge.
It had a gloss on it here, and I can't remember what it said.
Oh, okay.
I remember the reference, but badge,
How it will come
it
out,
doesn't
or-
play out.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the way that it plays out. The only way I can ever remember it is I think of fudge, and does fudge come out, so sometimes when I make fudge, it does not come out. I hope you like chocolate syrup. So have most of you seen a version of this now? Seen some video or something? Or are you still working mostly from text?
Ann and I have been hopping around from version to version,
Okay.
which has been fun to do it that way. We also watched, as I mentioned to you two, Shakespeare in Love, the 1998 Hollywood movie, which ends fantastically, where Queen Elizabeth endorses Romeo and Juliet as portrayed in the movie. But she says, Master Shakespeare, next time, do a comedy for Twelfth Night, meaning the event.
Yes.
And so it was a beautiful little segue to towards what we're reading now. And so seen in that light, I didn't know whether historically the sequence of the writing of the plays in fact reflected that, whether this in fact succeeded Romeo and Juliet's writing.
It did. This wasn't written until 1601. It was I think the last of the comedies that Shakespeare wrote. So, he'd learned a few things over the years. I think he was kind of throwing all of his skills into this one, seeing how many balls he could juggle at the same time. And
well, that's interesting. I'm going to look at that sequencing of writing / production to see how it plays. But I was fascinated by that touch at the end of Shakespeare in Love, Judi Dench imperiously instructing, commanding even Shakespeare to do something else, which evidently he did.
there are some scholars who feel that Twelfth Night was sort of a pivotal point in Shakespeare's writing career, and that there is obviously a lot of humor, but there is the potential darker side of the Malvolio scenes. And several critics have talked about how this is showing Shakespeare playing the comedy for all it's worth here, and then there's a shift over to something much more tragic as he I wouldn't say matures, but that might be a proper way to say it. He was never staying just with one mode, but constantly exploring. And there are elements of transition here, and we'll talk a little bit about this, about the ocean, about songs. I think there's more songs in this particular play than any other of Shakespeare's.
Yeah, he invented the musical and the dramedy in this one play.
Well, our time is up.
You guys have been wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for participating. And
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Very, very enjoyable.
Yeah.
Right.
Welcome.
We'll see you next week.
Yes. we'll see.
Okay, thank you so much.
Acts 4 and 5.
Right.
Take care.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Fare thee well.
Bye.